Well, hello. So in this video we're going to be going over plant structure. So there's a lot about plants that you don't know. Alright, the first thing about plants is that plants have both male and female reproductive parts. So we call that, for humans being a hermaphrodite, you have both male and female. There's no special word for it for plants, they just have male and female parts. So we're going to go and label those parts first. Alright, at the top you have this little thing here called a stigma. The stigma connects to this thing called a style, and then down here is the ovary. All three, this is a stigma, sorry, stigma, style, and ovary. All three of these make up the pistil, and the pistil, this is the female reproductive part. Okay, female reproduction. Stigma, style, ovary. Cool. Male parts. So, we have the filament, which is this part. That's the filament. And that is connected to the anther. Together, this makes up the stamen, and this is the male reproduction part. Okay, now, the most familiar part that you know are the petals. The petals actually they protect the reproductive parts. So you have male, female, petals protect. Guess you didn't know that about petals. They're not just pretty and there for fun. And then you have finally these little leaves down here that are called sepals, but they're not involved in reproduction. Not involved in reproduction. Okay, so something really cool about plants is how they pollinate. So pollination is simply pollen plus ovary. So pollen is like the plant version of sperm. That's the best way that I can put that. Pollen is going to be coming out of the anther or the stamen. So anther produces pollen. Now pollination occurs in the ovary. Okay, so the ovary is where pollination occurs. Now plants, there are a couple different ways that they can pollinate. They can either self-pollinate, which means the pollen would go straight to the stigma, down the style into the ovary, but it's from the same flower, so it could literally pollinate itself. And this ovary just turns into fruit. That's all that happens. Or you can have wind pollination. So that's like if the pollen is super light, then that might be like the pollen from one plant is carried over to the stigma of another plant, and then down to the ovary. Another thing that can happen is a bee. Bees are going to get pollen from the anther, and then the bee's feet are all covered in pollen, and the bee's feet land on the stigma, and then that's how it's pollinated. So I'm going to write that down. I'm just going to write it down here, sorry. Okay, so for pollination, you can have self-pollination, which means it's the same flower. You can have wind pollination, which just means that's with really lightweight pollen. like the pollen just is in the wind, which we all know that it's in the air because most of us are allergic to it, and it makes us sneeze. And then the finest one is insect pollination that we're going to talk about. So this is like when a bee has pollen on legs and then it goes to the stigma. It would like land on the stigma and then the pollen would travel down. Okay? So important points. Plants are both male and female. These are their parts. They can pollinate themselves. They can pollinate each other. Or insects can help pollinate a flower as well. But the pollen is produced in the stamen, that's the male part, and then the ovary is part of the pistil, which is the female part. And remember, ovaries, essentially that's where the fruit comes from if it's a fruit-producing plant. And that is your review on flowers, or introduction to new material on flowers. Make sure that you answer all of the smiley face questions, and please let me know if you have any questions.